Welcome in to a brand new episode of a whole new ball game. I'm Alex Hughes. There's my co-host Vinnie Pasquantino. It's always great to be with you on this amazing Thursday morning.
Alex, I'm just happy to be here too. Big show today. We're pumped to get it out to the people. Honestly, I'm just excited again, like I said, to be here because it's always great to just shoot it with you and just have a good time, talk about whatever we want to, get these great interviews out to the people, and it's just an exciting time to be alive.
Mm-hmm. Some might say it's like a V4V production, and I feel like just incredible stuff all today. And Jess is a great friend of mine and incredible person, and she's just a very fun person to talk to.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun on this interview. I didn't really know her other than her social media presence before interviewing her, so I was a little nervous going into this one, but we had a great time with her. I think we were able to get some good stuff, got some good info, and it was just I just had a really good time doing it.
And Jess is one of those people where it seems like even when you follow her on social media, it feels like you know her, because, like who she is out to the public, that's how she is in real life, and very, just very similar, really the same. And that's what I love about Jess. She's the most authentic person in the industry, in my opinion, one of the most. And, she's just so fun to talk to. And again, can't wait to get this interview out there and for you, all of our listeners, to enjoy it. But before we get into that, I just want to drop in. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform or you're watching this on YouTube, be a subscriber. Definitely just drop that 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts on. Leave a review, share it with a friend of yours if you enjoy it that much to do so. Because, again, we want to connect with as many people as possible to grow this game of baseball and to bring insight in people's lives to the best of our ability to do so.
Yep, what he said. That was a nice little ad there for us, Alex. Thank you for doing that for us. So, yeah, do what he said. Subscribe.
So, without further ado, let's get into our interview with Jessica Kleinschmidt, digital and MLB reporter in the NBC Sports Bay Area. She hosts NBC Sports Buck Talk as well as Corked Up with Rachel Luba, one of the most talked about agents with the biggest free agent. And according to Jess Kleinschmidt, using her words here, arguably the best free agent on the market right now, Trevor Bauer. Let's get into it and hear this conversation with Jessica Kleinschmidt. Have you on? It's been a few months since we last talked to you in a podcast format. It's free agency season right now. We won't get into too much about a free agent out there on the market because I know you said if we,
talk y'all grill me about Trevor Bauer, I'm going to get off the damn interview.
I'm just bringing up the Cy Young Award winner of the 2020 season.
He just got selected to the All MLB team, which is huge, I tell you.
So my first question for you is, what is it like hosting a podcast, Corked Up, with the agent to one of the biggest free agent out there on the market right now?
He's arguably the best free agent, unless you're a, JT Real Muto guy, which you should be. I love a catcher. I think catchers are very underappreciated. But the podcast is going amazing. We have a really good cult following, and I learn a lot from her and she learns a lot from me. And it's kind of cool to see what she's dealing with during free agency, because I've never been this close with an agent over my career, and to see what she's been able to accomplish, not just as a woman, but just as somebody who's so smart and innovative and kind of taking the media on her own. And that's been really cool too. And to know that a lot of people are trying to break the news of Trevor Bauer, where he's going to go, and she's going to handle it on her own, which is really kind of cool. But it's been fun, and we get to drink wine and learn about things. And our next one, we're going to talk about the Rule 5 draft. This week, though, it was, I don't even remember what we talked about. I told y'all I'm so tired. It's been a crazy week. But we talked about, the All MLB team, because the All MLB team is kind of like an all-star team. Last year, it was the inauguration year, and it kind of formed as a second half all-star team. So I was asking her, when you have to do arbitration or argue any of these cases, if you were to bring the All MLB team into it, would that mean anything? And she said no, because maybe this season, because there wasn't an all-star season, or in 2020, or an all-star selection, if you will. So it was kind of interesting from that dynamic. But then we got off on like a weird tangent, but it's just fun. It's just like she's one of my best friends. So we get to do that and talk about Trevor. We do call Trevor during the podcast, and I ask him, I give him an idea of how he should announce what team he's going to, and he's open to it, but you're going to have to listen to the podcast to see what that was about.
Well, I'm going to go off topic of Trevor Bauer because, one, we were told not to bring it up. Two, I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but, that just works out anyway. But in the NBA, the all NBA team basically means their money. It means they can get a max deal or a super max, whatever that may be. Do you think that in baseball that will eventually happen? Do you think that team will end up being prestigious enough to where it could contractually mean more money?
That's a great question. I feel like yes, but it's so new that you're kind of like, what is this right now, right? So if I keep pushing it out that it's like the second half all-star team, like it was supposed to be last year, which is fair. Like you think of Marcus Semien, who I've been covering a lot. He had such a good second half last season that you almost forgot about the first half, and that's not fair when you want to think about a free agency. And I just spoke to him recently, and he said the 2020 season was not enough. And now that he's a free agent, and the season before, all of those big names like the Carlos Correa, Francisco Lindor, those shortstops, Corey Seager, are going to be out there. It wasn't enough time. That's the first thing he said. I was like, hey, how's free agency? And he said, we didn't have enough time. And so I feel like if that is implemented in the future, we obviously don't know how many games we're going to have next season. I think eventually it could be brought into the contracts and what this guy's worth, because think about it from an all-star perspective, right? They easily bring in, oh, he's a 4-time all-star, but that's not fair. I mean, like, think about it when they have a good rest period during the all-star break, which is still weird that they have the all-star game in the middle of the season. That's a whole different topic. But if you're going to have a strong second season, which a lot of guys do, who was it? Kyle Seager was phenomenal with that. He would come back after an all-star break and just crush. And I feel like we all do that too. Like mama, after a 3-day weekend, I'm pushing out content. Today, maybe not. So I'm like the end of all-star break right now, kind of exhausted, but I'm still doing it. So, but I don't want to be judged because I'm exhausted. I want a little bit of a refresher period and go out from there. So I think with time, sure. But right now we're like, what is this thing? Like, what does that mean? Like, congratulations, yep. Like whatever. So, cause I heard before it was announced, I was told who won, and it was like, I didn't get excited because I was like, oh, cool. Like I have the scoop, but like nobody gives a shit about all MLB. And Rachel made a good point yesterday, because why would you have that after the Cy Young? So say, for instance, we didn't know that Trevor and Shane won it, right? Shane Bieber, of course. But if they won all MLB, that doesn't necessarily mean they would win the Cy Young. But imagine us not having them win all MLB selections, but they won the Cy Young. So I wish they flipped it. Rachel made a really good point with that, but it's an experimentation, right? It's what we're all kind of doing. Rob Manfred loves to experiment. So we're seeing from that. But for the next few years, just kind of maybe it'll be like a cute little plaque. But until then, I don't know.
Like you
It's
said,
a great question.
Like you said, a lot of experimenting right now, and yet we still don't know if we are going to have a DH in the National League as well. What's your prediction? Do you feel like teams can kind of bet on having a designated hitter in their lineup in the National League full time?
From what I'm hearing, it's probably not going to happen. And it's weird because I've always been I'm an AL girl, not just because I cover the A's, but I grew up an A's fan. And I like it, right? Like I like the idea that David Ortiz got to elongate his career. Albert Pujols will be a player forever because of this. My dude, Joey Votto, if he ever gets to an AL team, same thing. But after watching the Giants struggle, I think they hit like 178 with the DH was bad. However, they found out about the DH thing, not enough time to go out in the market and find like a decent DH guy. And there's a thing too, like, shouldn't they figure that out? I don't know, now to figure out like if we're going to have to do that. Nelson Cruz, that's a big question too. Like, what's he going to do? Because he doesn't know if it's going to be a universal thing. So I liked the idea of it. They implemented it. And Bob Melvin, during an interview, we had the A's review show, made a good point. He's of course an AL guy. He said if you are going to do a universal thing, I like it for the fans is cool, but like implement it to a certain extent. So like if the A's were traveling to a Pirates game, make sure it's all the NL stuff or all the AL stuff, but it varies. Cause I think of the A's and the Pirates, and Chris Davis was in left field and he got injured. And like, that was of course a freak accident. It's not always going to happen. Chris Davis with a K, of course, just so we're clear. But kind of one of those situations. So I like the idea of it, but from what I'm told, it probably won't happen. But we don't know, right? Hopefully there's more than 60 games next season. Of course, the CBA is coming up. We don't know how that's going to go, but all my sources, what so far, it's probably just going to be the same thing. NL, no DL, no DH. There is no DL. And then AL, the DH, which is fine. Like, I got off, like I was excited for the universal DH and it happened. And I was like, oh, this kind of sucks. It's not great. So it happened. It's whatever. But I like the idea that it elongates careers. And that's literally the only reason why I like it.
You would think that they would have that before guys were going to start signing. Like you would think they would know the rules that they're going to be playing on. I guess that's just.
I agree.
I don't know if they have owners meetings or whoever decides that, but you would think that would happen before guys are making decisions about where they're going. Because
I mean, that's why the Giants kind of scrambled. They thought it was going to be Hunter Pence, Pablo Sandoval. That didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even the guys who did, like, I think I talked to Alex Dickerson recently. He's like, yeah, I thought I was going to be a DH for a while, but like, I think I had 3 games at DH and I sucked. And Alex Dickerson hits the shit out of the ball. So if he struggles at DH, and I feel like it's different too. Like when I played, I'm a great defensive player. I killed it defensively to the point where you would forget that I would 0 for 4. That's how good of a defensive player I was. And that's a game changer too. And think about the DH, like, if y'all can relate, you sit around in the dugout waiting for your next at bat. You don't have a chance to go shake it off in defensive. And that's a whole different thing to teach a guy who isn't used to that his entire career. So that's a whole thing to bring 15 more teams into that. That's a big freaking deal. And I admit for the last few years, I was just kind of shouting out, I love a universal DH. I love it. And now I got to be honest, I'm not in love with it anymore. But you're right. If we want to shop for a DH, we need to do that like yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I know that when I first started DHing, it did take a while. Like I would DH once every 4 or 5 days. And it took me a while to learn how to do it because it's an entirely different ball game when you strike out. Now you have to think about that strikeout for an hour.
And that's what Alex Dickerson said.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we often look at y'all as fucking robots, so we don't give a shit, right? But then think about it this way. You go your first 2 at bats, you struggle. It's fine. And maybe it was a lefty versus lefty situation. So the manager put you in and you're like, oh, I got this. Or, the BVP was really good, but you were struggling that game. That's a thing. You don't get to go out with your boys, right? Like in your defensive game, you're just sitting on the bench, which is shitty, right? It's not a great feeling. And obviously everybody's different. Some people want to be left alone, whatever, but you're right. You just got to stew in that for a second. You're like, go sit down.
Yeah, go to the cage, hit off the tee,
wait for 8 more players, and then it's your turn again. Like that's gotta say you're not keeping warm. You have to figure out another. I mean, a lot of guys will just go, run on the bike or something like that, but it's different. And so I have a lot of sympathy for y'all. And my view on the DH has totally changed just from this season.
Well, it is interesting because I'm thinking about it now. I can't think of any other league that plays by different rules. Like in the NBA, they're in the East and West, they play by the exact same rules. In the NFL, in the AFC and the NFC, it's the same rules. So
and I wouldn't know, but that's, and even like, it's the only sport, like there's ballpark factors, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think that makes baseball cool though,
I love the ballpark factor.
Yeah. The ballpark factor for sure. Yeah. And
I actually wrote an entire chapter in a book on it, just to say.
Oh, we have another author. You're an author. What?
And I'm a chapter in a book, but
what chapter of what book is your writing in?
So I was a DFS writer. I did fantasy baseball for a while, but I was so geeked out about ballpark factors because it's not just, Coors, always stack at Coors. There was more than that, right? Because Coors wasn't just, but I'm from Reno. So I covered the Aces, which was basically the Coors of the PCL. So the PCL, I was hitting 300. Everybody fucking raked there. And then you add that into Reno, where it's the same thing. And so I had to interview these pitchers after giving up, their ERA balloons to like 11. I'm like, hey, like, what was going on there? And they're always like, I fucking hate throwing in Reno. And it was no different for the Rockies. So I was curious about that. Elevation, weather, wind, all of that stuff. And then it kind of translated into the bigs. I mean, like, guys are going to rake at Globe Life because of the humidity, and same with the Diamondbacks. It was no different from Reno because it was a high altitude and it was hot. And think about Dodgers stadium with the A's and the Astros during the ALCS. The balls were just leaving the stadium like crazy. And that's a ballpark factor. And I think the balls were juiced, but whatever, it's a whole thing. So it's really interesting from that dynamic. So I geeked out on it and I got to write a chapter on it, and I got $30 for it.
Well, at least it's something. It's more
than
you're getting.
My mom bought it. My mom bought the book. She's never going to read it, but she bought it.
Yeah. All right. So the one thing that I'm sure you get asked all the time, but it's something that is like pretty important to me, and I think it's huge, is you are one of the few females in baseball. There's more now, but you're kind of a trailblazer. So how does that feel? And also, how did you get into it? And I know you said you've played and everything. So could you just explain how you got into it and what made you fall in love with baseball?
Yeah, I mean, I was a player. I played baseball, but I could only play until I was a sophomore in high school because my coach was like, "Oh, we offer softball. It's the same sport," which I'll never forget that, because I was like, it's not. So I had to teach myself how to play a new sport all of a sudden. Like, so I got all the way to Babe Ruth league. So I got like in junior league. So I was like in the extended field. Like I didn't stop in little league, but then I had to go back to little league and like the little league field. And I'm not saying softball is little league, but the dimensions are the same. And this girl wants to throw me a pitch at her hip. I'm like, what the fuck do I do with that? So I had to teach myself how to play again. Luckily, I was a defensive nerd and I was so good at defense. And then I realized, like, even though I'm really good, I'm not going to play in college, but that's why I had to switch. Right. And so, as y'all can tell, I love talking, and I'm a good writer. And so that's kind of where it started. And we literally do not have time for me to give you the entire story, because like, it's tough. Like I dropped out of college because I hated school. Like, and I was like, I need to do this. So I dropped out of college and I was working in a really, really, really great government job, but I was like, I'm plateauing at that. I don't want to go to school. Like I'm over it. So I stopped doing that and started a blog and got discovered that way. So that's what I did. And so my journey is just different from everybody else's. I'm not saying, oh, drop out of school and create a blog, because I was just a freak of nature and I knew I was going to do this since I was 12. And I looked over at my dad after my first A's game and I was like, Dad, I'm going to cover that team one day. And I prayed about it and I worked my ass off, and now I'm here. However, the trailblazer part is a lot of fucking pressure. It's so much pressure because it's pressure. People are like, oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it, which is true. I feel like I genuinely can say if I can make it, anybody else can. However, my job is more than just talking on a podcast about baseball. Yep. A lot of women, young women and men, look up to me. And that's a lot. That's scary, because you don't want to fuck up. You don't want them to say, oh, well, she did this, so I have to do it that way. And then you can easily be a bad influence on them. Mm-hmm. I'm an aunt times 2, and I'm scared to death that they're going to see something that I do. One day they're going to Google me and see somebody talking shit about me, and that's going to fuck it up. So it's a lot. However, I just feel like I'm wired differently. I am not intimidated by anybody. I also don't complain. I know it's hard for women in the industry. We all get it. I tell this to Alex all the time. It's like, we get it. It's difficult, but shut the fuck up and do the work. Yeah. If it gets bad, sure, go to your manager, go to HR, whatever. And I've been so lucky that I don't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. When I have, it's been handled pretty well, to the point where enough shit has happened to women. People believe me when I get sexually harassed, which is a beautiful thing, because that didn't happen when I first got in the industry. So overall, it's amazing, the things that I've been given, like, and I can't say given because I worked for them, right? But it's also a lot of pressure. But I often forget that I'm a woman just because I just go in there and I do my job. I have a lot of big dick energy, and so guys don't walk all over me, and that certainly helps. And I ask questions. Like, I still don't 100% understand the Rule 5 draft.
Mm-hmm.
Sue me, but that's part of my job, is to ask the questions. And then it creates good content because Rachel's like, fuck it, let's do a podcast about that and stuff like that. So it's a lot of humility, and it's a lot of me admitting I need to learn more, and from different avenues. Like, I could pick Rachel's brain about the Rule 5 draft. I can ask a player who was drafted in the Rule 5 draft, and they might have two different ideas about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that. And I love learning from people. I love talking to people. And I will treat every single baseball player as a human being, period. I don't give a fuck if you go 0 for 4. I don't care if you go 4 for 12. I don't care if you are the Cy Young Award winner 100 times over. I'm going to speak to you like a human being. And I'm hoping you're going to do the same thing to me. Because at the end of the day, these guys are not a Baseball Reference page. They go home to their wives. They go home to their families. They go home to whoever. And I do not want to take that for granted. And that's also a lot of pressure, because you want people to know that person by what I just typed on a computer. And that's tough too, unless like I'm doing an interview and stuff like that. So the easiest answer I can give to that, I know I went on a rant, is it's fucking tough, but it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to know that I wanted to do something, I went out and did it, and now I get to, people look up to me, and that's phenomenal. It's still scary, but I can handle it. So it's been a pretty cool ride.
Well, and just like what you said, you said you're an aunt times 2. I'm now an uncle times 2 to 2 girls. And like, that's like the dream for them, is like, do what you want. Like, you don't need to go be a trailblazer, but you can.
And that's what I tell them too. Because if they ask me, like, I want to work in sports, I'm like, that's cool, but like, you don't have to. You do not have to work in an all male dominated industry to feel like you've made it as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a stay-at-home wife, a stay-at-home mom, great, but do it for you. Do not do it for your husband. Do it because that's what you want to do. You want to be a nurse? Fucking go do it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to blaze a trail by working in a male dominated industry. Right. This is just the path I chose. And that to me is a powerful woman, is when she chooses what she wants to do and does it. And that's fucking awesome.
When was the last time you surprised yourself?
Damn. I think it was a really cool offer that I got to cover the World Series. Like, an insane offer. I couldn't do it because it was a conflict of interest with NBC Sports. But the person who replaced me was a former MLB All-Star. And Fox went out to me first. They asked me to do it. And to know that I was even looked at by Fox was like really, really cool. And I had to turn it down. And my replacement was an MLB All-Star. I think that's when it kind of blew me away. And then moving here too, like to pursue the NBC job. And like, I think covering the A's there's so many little things. And that's what's cool, is like, there's so many things that keep adding up. And every now and then I have to journal like all these accomplishments. And, I have 2 shows. I produce Bach Talk by myself. All the guests that I've gotten them myself. And to know that I've never played in the game, because I'm not taking this away, a lot of former players are analysts now, and these guys are a phone call away. I had to develop those relationships. I didn't say like, oh, he was my pitcher on the Pirates, like now he owes me. I do all that on my own. So I love that I can't give you one actual answer, because a lot of like dope shit has done it, and I earned it. I 100% earned it.
So you're talking about how you're doing what you knew you wanted to do. What more is there for you to do? Like, if you look 5-10 years, whatever it may be, what do you see for yourself, or what do you want to see for yourself?
My next career goal is to like host a television show. But I mean, that's maybe, because I feel like TV's digital's still kind of taking over, right? Yeah. So, but I want to win an Emmy. That's my ultimate career goal, is I want to win an Emmy. I want to write a book. I want to weirdly, I want to start like make a chicken wing sauce. I want to create a chicken wing sauce. It's just like something I want to do because
What would the sauce taste like?
Okay, Alex, it's a personal question. You don't just ask somebody what a chicken wing sauce would taste like. That's it, like literally, because I honestly don't know. I would probably have like an assortment of chicken wing sauces.
Do you have a name yet
multiple
for the chicken wing sauce? Because that's probably more important than the taste.
I agree. And I don't know if it'll be like sports related or like Jess related. Because I feel like I'm one of those weird people. Like I love sports, but I will never name my child or my animals after a sports figure. I think that's fucking stupid. And some of my best friends are baseball players, but I'm not going to be like, hey, here's Matt Olson. Isn't he cute? And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Stop. Not my style. Just not my thing. Because like you have to live with that thing for the rest of your life. And that's like I'm just weird. But the names, I'm very weird about that. It's a great question because I'm like anal about like naming things. So I don't know, but
Alex, I've been told that I've asked great questions twice tonight and you have not been told that once.
No, Alex he did the how have you surprised yourself to the point where I couldn't even say that was a good question. It very much surprised me.
I can't believe that. I simply
will give him that. But and so personally, I want to be a wife and a mom for sure. But I want to do that also while producing a television show and starring in a TV show. Because I want to do so many things. So those are all the goals. And I feel like after that, I'm going to want to do some more stuff too, because I've always wanted to host a show. I'm hosting too. I wanted to cover the A's. I'm covering the A's and the Giants. And I'm also a national correspondent for MLB. So it's like, I do the things, but I do them +5, +6. So I'm never going to be satisfied in that, which is cool. I like that.
So how long have you been with NBC covering the team?
I just had my 2-year anniversary last month.
So have you found that when you started, it may have been more difficult to create relationships with players or whatever it may be, but now that people know who you are, like minor leaguers, like I know who you were before.
Did you really?
Yes.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So like me talking to you is way cooler for me than it is for you to be on our podcast. Like
my gosh, that's amazing. Thanks, Vinnie. No, that really makes me excited. I had no idea.
When I was originally on this podcast as a guest, we were the same week, and I texted Alec and I was like, "This isn't fair. Like, like she gets her own week. Like I don't need to be like we were just talking about where we're going to put guest spots, and I was in the tough guest spot role where it's like, all right, a bunch of people are going to listen. Now nobody's going to listen. That's where I was. But anyways, back to the question.
Not true. That's not true.
And I feel like that alone is a goal of mine. Like to know that somebody's like, oh, I know exactly who she is. Like that's amazing.
But so like, have you found that players are more willing to come talk to you knowing who you are, or like to do stories with you?
Yeah. Like even just this week, I had Dalton Jeffries. He's a prospect for the A's, the most upstanding human being in the world. And he was just like, he said it was so cool to be on Jessica Kleinschmidt's show. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Like you're a top A's prospect. Like, what are you talking about? But now it's just easier. I could just like text them a question, like, hey, I have a question about this. It's cool. And it's actually good for my reporting because I'm not scared to ask questions. If we have like a GM availability or an assistant GM availability, we had the assistant GM availability today with like the Rule 5 stuff, but I was like, I don't fucking get it. But congrats to our new 4 players. Like, sure. But I'm also not going to lie about that. But yeah, and it's like I text Chadwick or DM Chadwick Trump this week. And I was like, hey, like, can you come on the podcast next week? No problem. And Michael Morse, I literally got him a job at NBC Sports. And he's a former Giants player. And I was like, hey, like Mike would be great at this job. And he does it. And like Dallas Braden, that's probably one of the coolest moments too. I remember watching his perfect game. And not only did we become colleagues, he became like a brother to me. And like people name drop my name and he will take care of them. They're like, hey, I know Jess and Dallas will be like, what do you need? I'll take care of it. And like, that is bigger than anything. And I got to write about his perfect game right when quarantine happened. NBC turned into like a classics. Like remember ESPN classics? We just we showed a lot of things. And Dallas's perfect game happened. So I did a one-on-one interview with him. And obviously quarantine just happened, so I didn't have time to set all the studio stuff up. But it was in the background was a picture of me and my dad. And my dad passed away when I was 19. And Dallas was talking about how his mom died and he threw the perfect game on Mother's Day. And so when Dallas is telling me this story, Dallas, like I told you, really helped me through quarantine when I was going through some depression. In the background, it's a picture of me and my dad, and Dallas is talking to me, and we have this bond of both losing a parent. And Dallas is part of the reason why I covered the A's. And now he's like my brother. And to know he had no idea how much of an impact that had on me. And to know that like God put us there for that moment was like amazing. Mm-hmm. So it's always bigger than baseball. It's always bigger than baseball. And so that alone is cool. And well, and then and that's the respect thing too.
That's what I've always thought is it's all about the relationships that you build, and like it is a little bit of a family. It is.
And I don't fuck them over either. Like even if I see something like that's going on, like I could easily tweet it out or something. I could have literally made my career with some of the stuff I've seen Trevor Bauer and Rachel talk about. Mm-hmm. I could have easily been like, fuck you, Jeff Passan, like watch me take over your spot. But I love them. I love Rachel. Rachel's done amazing things for my life. And so is Trevor. And like Trevor reached out to me to be on his podcast. And that's how Rachel and I met. To know that Trevor Bauer saw my work is insane. Mm-hmm. And he was a fan of my work is insane. And he's told me all kinds of things. And I could have easily been like, interesting, tweet. But it doesn't matter to me, because as long as he's happy, that's like the one goal. I don't give a fuck where he signs as long as he's happy. It's all I give a shit about. And like, if it benefits me, like I have to go visit him in like a really nice place, cool, I'm down too. But like, whatever. So I want to tell y'all stories. I want y'all to just be happy and healthy. And I want to make sure I do it right, like not, if I see you, so say for instance, I'm in the clubhouse and I see like somebody doing something, I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I want the readers to be in the clubhouse with me, figuratively, but I want to make sure that I'm telling the story right. So Vinnie, if I see you, rehabbing or something, but you're smiling, I'm like, you know what? He's in the middle of rehab, but he looks happy. I'm going to verify like, hey, are you happy right now? Can I write that you're happy? And everything like that. And even with Mike Fiers, like sometimes you have to approach him and be like, hey, I have to ask you a really fucking shitty question about the Astros. Sorry. But he's like, I get it. And even times of like, hey, can you not ask me about that? And I won't fucking ask him about that. Unless it's like a stupid question. They're like, Jessica, don't ask me like my hair care routine. I'm like, I'm going to fucking ask you your hair care routine because it's fantastic.
I think one of the biggest things that I respect you about, and we've talked about this before, is like when you write your articles, like you write it as Jess. Like it's not like just Jessica Kleinschmidt, the reporter, like it's Jess. Do you feel like that is a challenge at times? Because like if I'm reading your work for the first time and you're like, well, this is really like not professional that I'm like used to reading, do you have to feel like you have to kind of continue to reintroduce yourself every single time a new reader is reading your work or listening to a podcast you're doing?
I feel like I don't give a fuck about that. Like, I don't want to constantly be introducing myself to people. I'm not going to lie. Like your energy always introduces yourself before I even say, hey, Alex, I'm Jess. Mm-hmm. Y'all can spot me a mile away. Mama's coming. That's what's happening. But that's the thing. When I found out I was taking over the A's main coverage, the first thing, and I love my editor, was the content vice president told me. He's like, you're taking over the A's coverage. Don't change who Jess is. Obviously, you have to be chill. Like if AJ Puck is undergoing surgery, I can't be like, that fucking sucks, AJ. I have to be like, hey, AJ had to go over this. He underwent surgery and Dr. Ella Tratch did this. So I can't be like a dick about it. But I just had the A's review show. And the first question they asked me, I was like, yes. And I was like, ew. My mother would be like, hey, I saw you on TV. You look like a fucking dick. I don't want to do that. I have to be like, hey, be Jess. And I talked about Chris Bassett's curveball. I talked about how Sean Murphy has daddy power at the plate. I said daddy power at the plate on regional television. I don't give a fuck. That's who I am. And I said kerfuffle when I never say that. And I made a joke. I'm like, Jessica just said kerfuffle. She doesn't say that. But you have to be yourself because A, I want people to approach me. B, I'm exhausted trying to be somebody else. And C, like, I'm going to go to bed at night thinking like, hey, I was being myself through that. I don't care if you like me or not. Like, I really couldn't give two fucks. But at the end of the day, I want you to leave entertained and learning something. I want you to read an article, like feel like we can just have a beer, but you still learned something. Like I'm very funny, I'm very witty, but I'm very smart too. And I want you to like embrace that in all of my articles. And that's a great question because no matter what I'm doing, I don't care if I have to write a thesis. My personality needs to shine through. And that's just the one goal. And the fact that I have people that I work with that edit my work and say, yeah, that's Jess, that's her. Because if my byline's not there, I want people to still know that I wrote that. And that's very important to me. You know, like I don't want you to see a video of me and you read my article and I'm like being a smart ass on TV, but you read my article and I'm just like, yes, of course, AJ Pelk underwent surgery. Like, I don't want to do that shit. No.
So did you have to learn how to not give a shit or did you just?
I did.
Like, okay, talk about it.
I wanted to be like all the girls growing up. So bad. So bad. And, you know, I played baseball. So all my best friends were dudes. And when I got to high school, I'd be like in the cafeteria and all the guys are around and we just finished a baseball game the night before. I probably threw 4 innings and crushed it, obviously. And they wanted to talk to me about it. But all the girls were like, oh, she's probably like having sex with all those guys. I'm like 14. I'm like, guys, like, come on. And it took them a while to do it. And then I realized like, oh my gosh, they think I'm this, they think I'm that. And as a woman, with social media, like I'm always pressuring myself, right? So before that, it was kind of like, I wanted so badly to be like Laura and Katie, these 2 girls who were beautiful and girly and whatever. But I realized like I didn't want to be them. I wanted to be like them where they just were themselves, right? Because like I was like a tomboy growing up and I wasn't quite hanging out because all the guys got girlfriends, right? When they were old enough, they got girlfriends and the girlfriends didn't like me because I was like really fucking cool and like whatever. And so I was like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, do I make new friends? Like whatever. So I had my best friend in the whole wide world. We've been friends for like 20 years. And she loved me for me. Like she would go to my baseball game. And I was also a cheerleader. So she went to my football games to watch me cheerlead and everything like that. And I was like, you can still be a cheerleader and a softball and a baseball player, Jess. But like, don't lose who you are. So I don't even think I really started being myself, Vinnie, until 5 years ago. And that's when literally my shift in my career happened. It was Field Yates from ESPN. Because I was just like feeling like I couldn't figure out why I wasn't making it in the industry. I was like, nothing's happening. And he was like, Jess, you're a superstar. Like, just be yourself. And I was like, thanks, Field. Great advice. But then I realized, I was like, wait a second. Field is doing that. And he's extremely successful. So then that's when I woke up one day and I was like, okay, Jess, like you're not perfect, but you're pretty awesome, right? Even your imperfections, like people can deal with. And then as the moment I did that, it was great. The only thing that sucks though, is now that I'm being way too much myself, I worry that like when I meet people, they don't like me for me. And even though I'm myself on TV, for the most part, I don't cuss as much, obviously, but it's like, it's still kind of a weird thing. It's like a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, how can I be myself and do all these things and still be successful? It makes no sense to me. So it was a learned thing, but I noticed like, people don't like authentic people, and not just because like, oh, they're comfortable in their own skin. I meet a lot of people and they realize they don't like me because I understand the imperfections that I have. And I don't want to say negative things about me because I'm phenomenal. I'm magnificent. And I need to embrace my imperfections. My imperfections aren't like I are bad. They're just quirks, right? And like I get a pimple every now and then. I have a loud mouth and like sometimes I get a little fluffy because I eat a lot. Like whatever, it's fine. But when it comes to a lot of people don't like to see the negatives in themselves because they see somebody being authentic and they're like, oh, they're embracing who they are. And that's dark for other people. And so I notice a lot of people don't like me just because I'm myself. And that's just a reflection of themselves, right? And it happens on the internet all the time. Somebody just, Jessica, you're fat and ugly. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's literally not true. I'm fantastic. Second of all, I literally have your dream job, especially men. And not only do I have their dream job, I'm killing their dream job. I'm doing amazing at it. And I need to not take that into offense today. Like even today, some girl who's been bashing on me for 5 years came at me. And instead of telling her to fuck off, I just said, I'm going to pray for you. And that made me feel good, because what is she going to do? Get mad because I'm trying to bring the faith of God into her? Like, what are you going to be mad about that? So it took me a while. Once I did, I don't get bothered by things as much. I mean, like, obviously I'm very hard on myself because it's a lot of pressure that my job sometimes is. And you're always worried that what people are going to think about you, no matter what. Like, I really don't give a fuck what people think about me, but sometimes I do, right? You just do. So it was a thing that I had to learn for myself. When I wasn't trying to be the next Katie Nolan, the next Sarah Spain, I'd be the first Jess Kleinschmidt, and she's pretty badass, right? And there's no competition when you're yourself. There's no competition when you're authentic, and that's why I'm as successful as I am.
So when you talked about how that was kind of when your career shifted, like I'm thinking of some of the best at bats I've ever had, or when I just don't care, like when I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to go be myself. Because sometimes like I try to emulate somebody and it never works. Like I'm never going to be Robinson Cano and have that sweet of a swing. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
But like when I'm myself, I seem to have better at bats. Why do you think that is? Like you were talking about when you became yourself, like you took off.
I think it was a surrendering. It was like, even if I fuck up, I gave who I am. And that's like, I even take that to dating. If I go on a first date with a guy and he doesn't like me, and it was because I was trying to be somebody like that I wasn't, that's probably going to feel weird. Even in an interview, if I have an interview with somebody, like I'm nervous about it because it's like, because Mike Yastrzemski, I get weirdly nervous because he's such a good human being that I'm scared that I'm not going to show the audience that. And he's wonderful. But sometimes I'll leave the interviews like, why was I so stupid? Why did I say that? And that's when I realized I'm overthinking things. But like my Michael Moore stuff, he's like my boy. So we're just shooting the shit. People loved that interview. My Dallas Braden interviews, me and Rachel. That's why we're so successful. I'm fucking interviewing my best friend. So it's kind of like that. And I think it's, like I said, it's surrender and loving yourself, as weird as it sounds. Like it's self-love, and it's a little bit of self-deprecation because I'm not perfect and I have humor and a lot of humility and going through some shit too. Like my life hasn't been easy. So it's like, if I could take on this challenge and do it, and even if I fail, I've dealt with worse things, and I've made it through those things. You know, even when a guy doesn't text me back, I think about like, oh, I've been through worse things than this, you know? So it's just about like putting yourself out there, and confidence and awareness, even the good and the bad things. Like as long as you're being true to who you are, it's fine. But it's not easy, Vinnie. It's so not. And I wish I could just say like I woke up one day and I was like, oh, this is great. Because I did that. But then a week later, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good. It's not good. So you have to embrace the dark moments too. Like, hey, I'm not feeling great. I want to be like Rachel. I want to be like Trevor. I want to be like Michael Morse, whoever. But then you have to go through those weird moments where you're just like feeling like shit and embrace them, and then wake up the next day and try again, you know? Because I mean, think about it from Vinnie. Literally, you fuck up constantly, right? As a baseball player, if you're hitting 333, you take a step back. That means how many times a day are you fucking up? Quite a bit, right? But if you're hitting 333, you're rewarded. That's fucking crazy if you think about it. And so I think about it from that perspective. I'm like, oh, wait, you know what? I think Mike Trout's gone 0 for 4 before. Look at him. Fucking killing it. And Marcus Semien, not always great. But every time the players will talk about him, they'll be like, he's the best man in the world. And these players want to leave more than just the baseball reference numbers. They want to be like, they left as a good human being, a good teammate. Every guy I've ever interviewed who left the game said they missed the team more than anything. They couldn't give two shits about a good game. They miss their boys. They miss being leaned on, all of that. And that's what I want to do. I want to leave I want somebody to be like, you know what? She was just herself and she was happy about it. And she brought joy and she was funny and whatever. And that's what it takes. So it's a fucking tough journey, but when you get there, it feels amazing.
So Jess, this is our favorite part of any interview. We finally came up with a name for this segment. It's called 3 Up and 3 Down. Vinnie and I will go back and forth. So we each have 3 questions for you. What are your thoughts of the name? That's not my first question.
I think it's cute. It's cute.
Okay. All right. So first one for me.
Vinnie needs to get the fuck off of his phone is what he needs to do.
This is paper and pen.
Damn it.
This is paper and pen because I'm taking notes.
I am an asshole. I am so sorry, Vinnie.
Oh, that's all right.
That's
society's fault. That is 100% society's fault.
No, hey, I'm old school. This is how I do things.
I am too.
I
have a calendar that I like write in and I journal and I'm a note taker. Fuck yeah, dude. That was so rude of me. And I
got a calendar right here too for the podcast.
Fuck yeah, dude. And he's a lefty too. You love to see it.
Lefty power hitter.
Yeah.
Actually, Vinnie, I'm going to switch it up on you. Why don't you ask the first question to Jess?
Okay. Do you prefer drinking out of glass or plastic?
Glass. I took one wine class and it changed everything.
All right.
But I'm also from Reno and I will not say no to a red Solo cup.
And also she's drinking out of a glass cup right now.
And Trevor Plouffe loves to give me shit. That was a name drop. He always jokes that I drink out of a fish bowl, which I do. But it's cute. And I'm girly like that.
All right. I'll ask you. This is one that Vinnie gave me a lot of shit for. What is one TV show that you love that everybody hates?
Oh my gosh. Alex literally had me on the phone the other day. He was like, Vinnie said this is a stupid question.
It's not just a stupid question.
Okay, so say it again. The show that I love that everybody hates.
See, now it's also a bad question. Like, then I have to repeat it. Like, that's just not.
Well, because like the opposite is easy to answer. So it's a show that I love that everybody hates.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be like the Real Housewives shows. I love that shit.
You're like, I don't hate those shows. So out of
see, there you go. I'm trying to think like if people are like Jessica, that's so stupid. Oh, well, no, people like 90 Day Fiance too. But I'm just gonna go with 90 Day Fiance and Real Housewives.
Okay.
I need to watch the stuff that's completely opposite from sports to like even me out.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Out of all the people that you could say one of the people that you've named drop on this episode, there's been so many.
I know. I love that about me.
Or just anybody you've ever seen. Who is the greatest leader that you've ever seen?
I would say Marcus Simeon because I don't even know how to describe it. I actually had Dalton Jeffries on this week. And so Dalton and Marcus they both work, they're Cal graduates. So they're Bay Area people. And I made a joke. I was like, Dalton, I feel like Marcus like comes in on a cloud. He's such a fucking professional to the point where I just like, I don't know how to see. I can't even describe him, but you see the way that he works that clubhouse in the A's clubhouse. And you have like Chris Davis, who's extremely shy, but Marcus manages to break Chris Davis out of the shell. And you have Mark Canha, who is a great leader himself. But when you have somebody like Mark Canha or anybody who says that you're a great teammate third after being a great man, a great human being, it's great. And then like he takes on all this stuff and he does more. And that to me is a leader. And when he talks, people listen. And I think that's why I want him so badly to be back with the A's, because he is such a good guy in the community, a good human being. So when people talk, they listen. I feel like that's imperative for the A's. You want people to come out to those games. So I would definitely say Marcus Simeon.
Number 2 for me, if you could title the current chapter of your life in your book of your career or life, whatever it is, what would you name this chapter in your life right now?
Don't sleep on me.
I love it.
Okay. What is the best I'm just going to say best. What's the best position in baseball?
Shortstop. Done. Easily.
Wrong.
Easily. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because I was the only person growing up that said, I swear, this position, there will be power hitters there. Pay attention. And I was right. Because look at Corey Seager, look at fucking Carlos Correa, look at Trevor Story. Like, it was always, and I'm not taking anything from Derek Jeter, but like, I'm a Cal Ripken girl, whatever. But I always loved a defensive player. I'm a defensive nerd. And to see that they're finally having powerful shortstops is great. Marcus Semien, of course, is part of it, but I love me some Brandon Crawford too. I think Brandon Crawford is a very underappreciated shortstop.
I grew up with Brandon Crawford in Richmond.
I'll have to give you the interview that we did because he put me in my place one year. So because I was obsessed with the defensive metrics, like the DRS, they were introducing it to infielders, and he gave me a look, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about this new stat?" And he was like, "The eye test," and I was like, "Done."
I just want to know what he puts in his hair. I mean,
it's called Joe's. I asked him that. I was like, "Why is your hair always wet?" And it's called Joe's something. I'll ask him again because he gave it to me, but he's like hardcore sponsored by them.
That's good for him. Good for him.
So I gave you the good stuff. I asked the important questions, Vinnie, obviously.
Well, that's what I'm coming to find out.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I need to just start asking you questions about different either.
Yeah, I don't always. I couldn't give two shits about your slash line. I want to know, like, because Grant Holmes, he's an A's pitcher, gorgeous hair. The only guy I've ever amazing. The only guy I'm ever self-conscious around my hair, because I was in the A's clubhouse this year, and I call him our liaison. He's the guy that introduces me to the players if I don't know them. And he because I have amazing hair. Like, look at me. It's fantastic. And so Fernando, the liaison, goes, I have to ask, like, have you ever been self-conscious around anybody's hair? Naturally, Grant Holmes is right down on the side. I was like, honestly, like Grant Holmes. And I finally told Grant that story today. Grant's extremely shy. And he was just like, yeah, like, you should be self-conscious around me. I was like, all right, there it is. Great human being too. I love him. That's my favorite thing too. If I hear that they're quiet or boring, those are my favorite interviews. I'm like, not when I'm done with them.
Number 3 for me, you've done so many podcasts, interviews on other people's podcasts, either on your own, where Rachel's asking you a question. What is one question you've never been asked before that you've always wanted to have been asked in a podcast interview?
And you know, what's weird is the last 6 months, I feel like people have been asking me the questions. I'm like, ooh, that's a good question.
Ooh, did you stump her, Alex?
That's a you should have prepped me on one. But that's
not being real and authentic, Jess.
It is a great question. Not gonna.
That's not being real and authentic. That's not like the Jess way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've never stumped you before. I don't think
you've never stumped me before, and I'm very witty, but I feel like that's a great question because yes, I have been on a trillion podcasts and asked the question. I will say the one question I'm sick of being asked is
that's a good question too.
Fuck, I lost it. But that was a good question. I wish I could answer it, but I don't quite.
So now you just got to come on for a third time. You can be the third time guest on the podcast.
God, I will kill you if you ask me. Actually, I've never really been asked like what inspires me. I've been asked who inspires me, but like not what. But I also don't 100% know how to answer that.
All right. I was going to ask that, so I guess never mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think I can answer that question for you. Like, I think I can answer that. Well, like what inspires you?
Be careful, because if you fuck this up, I'd be so pissed off, Alex.
Yeah, like you can give me the okay if we can keep this.
I mean, at least we're at the end of the interview, so
right.
I said what, not who, but what.
No, what? I think I can answer the what.
All right, go ahead.
What's your phone background?
Oh, that's a great question, Alex. That's a great question. So my next goal in life is to win an Emmy, right? So when I heard Trevor Bauer won the NL Cy Young Award, he had a Cy Young Award as his background since he was like at UCLA. And so when I heard that, when Rachel told me that, I put my background an Emmy. Because I want to win an Emmy. And Trevor loved that. I told Trevor about it. Well, Rachel told Trevor, and it's good. I mean, my actual lock screen is my nephew. It's look at all those notifications. I'm so popular. But my actual wallpaper is an Emmy because I'm going to win an Emmy. It's like not even a question. So
that's what inspires you in this moment, in this chapter.
No, I feel like that's not the right answer. No. Because inspire isn't just in this moment. Inspire is that's a broad thing, and I don't quite know yet. Maybe I will. I'm curious though, Vinnie, what like notes are you taking?
I have notes on every person we've interviewed so far, and I write down different things. So currently, one of the things I wrote was Trailblazer. Just do it. Don't name animals after players.
I just don't like that. Or like alcohol. I feel like that's stupid too. Here's my puppy Jameson. It's like, all right.
Like I've definitely had friends that have named their dogs like Jeter. Like that's
that's fine. I wouldn't do that.
Alex, you grew up in the Northeast. What do you expect?
That's true.
Alex, are you going to wrap the show, or are you going to make
you have the third question?
No, I went first.
I'm bad at math.
This is why you don't change things up, Alex, because you get confused because you're not the math guy.
Right. I don't take notes during interviews. So, well, to wrap this podcast up, Jess, we wanted to say thanks so much for taking the time after your long day of work.
My long week of work, Alex.
Long week, long life. To come on the podcast tonight. As Vinnie always says, put yourself over. Where can everyone follow you on social media?
30-second elevator pitch. Where can people follow you, and what do you bring to the table?
I do not want y'all to follow me. I'm good. No, I'm just kidding. Jessica Kleinschmidt on Instagram, Kleinschmidt JD on Twitter. I don't just do the baseball and sports thing. I make it fun, and I tweet about my personal life every now and then because I want people to approach me because I'm a normal human being. I want people to know an actual human being is behind my Twitter account, and that's why I have over 50,000 followers. And I'm on my way to 10,000 followers on Instagram. If y'all could make that happen, that would be great.
Also newly verified on Instagram this year, right?
About 4 or 5 months ago. Yeah. And you have to know somebody to get that happen. I found that out too.
Well, that's what we've learned here today. Jess Kleinschmidt, real human being. So thank you for taking the time to show up and be on our podcast. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Alex is lucky I love him because I am exhausted.
How did you all enjoy listening to that interview? Could you?
I enjoyed it really well, Vinnie.
Oh, did you? Very good, Alex.
I did enjoy it really well. I did enjoy it really well as I'm moving all around in the outro like you always do. And yeah, really good interview.
If people are watching this on YouTube, Alex is trying to copy my shtick of getting close to the camera, and he just isn't as good at it. I don't try to ask his questions and get into his boring broadcaster questions that he likes to ask and, the meaning of everything. I'm just over here having a good time, asking the hard-hitting questions. Alex, stay in your lane, and I'll stay in mine. How about that?
Vinnie, I know no episodes have gone out there yet with our new segment that we've started doing, but I just want the record to show, and God bless anyone who has gotten to this point of the podcast because this is a longer episode. So I guarantee you, I'm sure you probably bored everyone to death by now. And so no one's watching this except us right now. But honestly, I can't wait for our viewers and listeners to hear this new segment because I just can't stop winning. And it feels so great. And you might make the argument to, well, you're the interviewer, you're supposed to win. Well, you're a professional baseball player and you should be able to ask somewhat okay questions that might get a borderline strikeout to win the game. But
Well,
that has not happened.
like we have talked about, since you want to get into this, we talked about it. Wherever I am, you come find me and let's do a home run derby. And I bet you 100 times out of 100, I destroy you. And that is the equivalent I want to use for us asking questions to people. Is you should be good at that. You should win. If I win, that's an embarrassment for you. As much of a greatness and how good it feels for me to do it, it's so much more embarrassing for you to lose than it is great for me to win. So, the viewers will see that I have not lost every single time. And those nights, that episode, like when that one episode comes out where I did win, I'm going to sleep unbelievably well that night.
Well, Vinny, let's just let the record show, I don't care how many home runs you've hit at Old Dominion or how many home runs you've hit so far with the Kansas City Royals. You can't scout report me because I haven't played baseball to the public since really Little League. So you can't really know how well of a power hitter I am. And let me just tell you, I'm dangerous at the plate. I can definitely hit some home runs and to show you up in a home run derby without question.
I just want you to know that you would never beat me in a home run derby ever.
I would bet at least one time. If we did 5 home run derbies, I would at least.
If we did 5 home run derbies, I might win 6 times.
That's just impossible.
That's how many times I would lap you around.
No. Let me tell you, I could beat you in a home run derby.
I'm glad you have this confidence, but I just want you to know that I probably have more confidence when it comes to this area of our lives. So, one day we can find out, and we'll just really see how that goes.
I can't wait for that day to make you look even more bad. Well,
you know what we're going to do? We're going to get rid of this show that's going on right now, and we're just going to tell everybody we have Carl freaking Nonamaker on the show tomorrow. My favorite coach that I've ever had in my life thus far. Sorry to any of my other coaches. I had him when I was at such a young age, and we've stayed in each other's lives thus far that no one else has really had a chance. He recruited me. He taught me everything he knows that I know of, at least. And maybe he's hiding some stuff from me. Who knows? But the best, the absolute man, Carl Nonamaker, tomorrow morning, and I could not be more fired up for it.
Absolutely. Carl was a great interview, and I'm still wondering, I guess the final word I'll put on this podcast is I'm still wondering why he recruited you. But without further ado, thank you for tuning into this episode of A Whole New Ballgame.
Anybody else hear that? How Alex said without further ado, as if he was introducing another show. We're ending a show, Alex. We're not starting a new one. Gosh, you would think you would know that by now. So instead of without further ado, let's just say, all right, let's see you next time. We'll see you on tomorrow's show, whatever it may be. So without further ado, goodbye.